welcome. My name is Vidal Chavan. I'm the Director of Strategy, Research, and Organizational Performance with Durham Regional Police. We're doing this one a little bit differently tonight. We've had some technological difficulties, and so we're doing it podcast style tonight, but that will not detract from what will be a fantastic conversation. So on behalf of the Regional Municipality of Durham, the Ontario Black History Society, Durham One, the Canadian Jamaican Club of Oshawa, and the Durham Regional Police Service, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome and thank you all for participating in our virtual Black History Book Club. Our goal is to celebrate the many achievements and contributions of Black Canadians, not just in February, but year-round. It is about honoring the enormous contributions that Black people have made and continue to make. It is about celebrating resilience, innovation, and a determination to work towards a more inclusive and diverse Canada. It is also important for each of us to learn about, understand, and appreciate our differences, to strive toward a future that allows for us to have every opportunity to flourish in a multicultural society where the value and dignity of all is recognized. It's also important to make note of the relational and contextual quality of this protocol as I deliver an acknowledgement of territory. An acknowledgement of territory is an invitation to reflect on personal relationships with Indigenous nations. When we acknowledge treaty, we are asking individuals to explore their rights and responsibilities to place and people. And when land is acknowledged, we are encouraging you to seek out the history and teachings of the natural world. We would like to begin this by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Mississauga, adjacent to the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, and in the territory covered by the Williams Treaty. This place is and will continue to be home to Indigenous peoples. Let us move forward together with kindness and respect. So this is our second of 4 book discussions that we'll be hosting with various Black Canadian authors throughout the year. We hope that you will continue to find these sessions useful and informative. And tonight we feel very privileged to have Ettie Rutherford with us to share her thoughts and give us some insight into her much acclaimed book, Women Are Worthy: Why Perch Like a Chick When You Can Soar Like an Eagle. And so without further ado, I'm going to get to the bio of this fantastic guest that we have tonight. And as I did the last time and will do this time, I'm reading the long version because I believe it's important to give people their flowers for what they've accomplished. So, Ettie Rutherford is an outstanding educator and transformational speaker. She's a recently retired elementary school principal with the York Region Catholic School Board. Her entire life has been focused on the education of children, as well as supporting educational practitioners and women in Jamaica, Alberta, and Ontario. She is an educational expert who has worked as classroom teacher, elementary school principal, language arts consultant, and anti-racist program developer. She's presented papers to educational conferences and guided educational committees in Alberta, as well as in Ontario. Her book, which gives a clear picture of her life, shows that in the midst of broken dreams, enduring psychological abuse, being a Black immigrant woman and single mother of 4 children, she learned to soar ahead through the ardent pursuit of education, through being a lifelong learner and by working with other women. After arriving in Alberta as an immigrant teacher from Jamaica, Ettie immersed herself in working with the multicultural community at large, the local Calgary police and the government agencies, as well as parents who were new to Canada. She also initiated a Saturday morning school for Black students. Because of her work in Calgary, she earned a certificate of appreciation from Prime Minister Brian Mulroney for her contribution to multiculturalism in Calgary. After gaining her master's degree from the University of Calgary, Ettie acquired an early childhood education certificate from the Alberta Department of Education, and later from York University an ESL specialist certificate. She's the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award from Afro Global Television and has been acknowledged as one of Canada's 100 most accomplished Black women. She has also been honored with the Kay Livingstone Award from the Congress of Black Women of Canada, with which she still works. She has received a certificate of recognition from the Jamaican Canadian Associations in Toronto and Calgary, as well as acknowledgement from the Markham City Council for her outstanding contribution to the Markham community. as well as a Literary Award of Excellence from Genesis Magazine. Ettie is the founder and CEO of two businesses, Women Are Worthy, as well as ER Educational Consulting. They provide step-by-step strategies for women, educators, parents, businesses, and community organizations with a focus on developing skills in leadership, decision-making, communication, and anti-racist programming. And Ettie lives right here in the beautiful town of Whitby with her husband Des and her daughter Carolyn. And we are absolutely pleased that Ettie has decided to join us tonight. So Ettie Rutherford, just to make sure we have audio connection, thank you for being with us tonight. Please say hello to the people.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
We can definitely hear you, so that's good. So let's jump right in. So the book, Women Are Worthy, Why Perch Like a Chick When You Can Soar Like an Eagle. Tell me about what the inspiration was behind that title.
Well, I've always been interested in what's happening to women and what's happening to teenage girls, and people were not aware of where this interest was coming from. I had started another book about family, but some time ago I attended a conference in San Diego, and with some of the things that happened there, I decided to complete a book about my life story because I was working with women, but they knew very little about me. All they knew was Ettie, the classroom teacher, and the principal, and I didn't think that was fair because my life was much more than that, and I wanted people to know that I understand when they talk to me about some of the challenges they're having, because I have had those challenges also. So that's one of the reasons why my book is there.
Right. So you, and I'm glad you brought that up. You've had an interesting and diverse body of experiences over the course of your life to this point, and you know, that sounds like they were the impetus for you and the groundswell behind writing the book. Maybe you can walk us through a bit of that history and how you found yourself now in Whitby, Ontario, as the author of Women Are Worthy.
Okay, I am from Manchester, Jamaica, and I grew up with my grandmother from I was 3 years old. And with my grandmother, there were her children, my uncles, and I followed them around and I bothered them and they got tired of me. But from that time, my motto was, I'm going to show them. So whatever they did, I did. In infant school, I could read because they taught me, and I decided from that early age that I wanted to be a teacher because I was always helping other children. My family was able to send me to Manchester High School, and the plan was that when I left high school, I would go to college to become a teacher. As I stated in my book, a few months after I finished high school, I was pregnant and not married. I had a son, and the following year I was pregnant again and not married. I had another son. Then I got married and I had a third son by the time I was 22. I fought my ex-husband to go to college because he wanted a wife to stay home and cook and clean and walk behind him, and that was not in my makeup. So I went to Micro Teachers College, and there I was trained, and I taught a while in Jamaica. And at that time they had found oil in Alberta, just flowing, and they were building thousands of houses and hundreds of schools. So they were hiring trained teachers from all the Commonwealth countries. And that's how I ended up in Alberta, north of Edmonton, in a little place called Smith with about 500 people, no running water, no doctor, etc., etc. And then I left there after 3 years to go to Calgary, where I could work and study at the same time. I worked full-time with the Calgary Catholic Board, and I kept on studying until I got my Bachelor of Education, and my ex-husband left me and the 4 kids then. Then I went on to get a graduate diploma in curriculum and instruction, and then a master's degree in education. After that, I was made the language arts consultant for the 52 elementary schools. Then after that, I moved to Ontario, and I started over with the York Region Catholic Board. I'd also like to point out that when I went to Alberta, although I was a trained teacher and they had me teaching, they sent me to do grade 12 subjects. I think it was just a way of punishing immigrants who came here because most of us were more competent than some of the people with whom we were working. So I moved here and my story began with the York Region Catholic Board when legislation said we had to have an anti-racist policy. I was taken from my classroom to the Central Board office to write the anti-racist policy. And I was doing that, and after that doing the in-services for administrators, teachers, and caretakers. But still, I wasn't made a principal until 10 years later. I'm now retired and I work with women and parents, and I get a lot of calls about helping students. My focus now is on helping women because we are always being pushed to the back of the room.
Yeah, so it really interesting, and I think, you know, we'll get later into some of the issues that you experienced in the education system, but specific to now your work with women and young women, I guess the question is, so you find yourself now as an unwed mother trying to find her place in society, married to somebody who does not necessarily support her finding her voice. How did you find the resilience to continue to move forward in that situation? What advice would you give to young women who maybe find themselves in a similar situation right now?
Well, what I say to women and I say to everyone, Winston Churchill said to his men when they were going to war, if you even find yourself in hell, keep moving. And I was able to keep moving. And I think mostly because of the upbringing that I had with my grandmother and my uncles. I got a lot of attention and they did not deter me from doing anything that I tried to do. And that makes a big difference in how we react to life's challenges. I also knew that without education, I couldn't move forward. So when I was left with the kids, that had to be a focus because we know that we have to be not just twice as good, but I'd say 10 times as good. And even then we are seen as being too uppity and too loud. So I knew I had to continue being strong for my children and for myself. And I also made sure I kept healthy because my biggest fear wasn't about money or food or winter clothes. My biggest fear was what would happen to my kids in Alberta where I had no family. What would happen if I got a serious illness like cancer or something like that?
And I should say at this point, as we're having this conversation, for those of you who are listening in, if you do have some questions, please put them in the chat and we have some moderators that will be looking at those and forwarding them off. So I do want to make sure people are aware of that. So, you know, as you're on this journey of discovering your own self-worth as an individual, as a woman, as a Black woman, and as a Black woman in Canada, what are some of the challenges that you faced, but that you think are common to the Black women in Canada and their experience that can have impact on their self-worth?
Well, of course, racism and sexism. And so we have what we always say, we have a double whammy, not just the racism, we have both. And I think it's imperative for us to acknowledge that because I think some of us are living in denial. And it's only when we call it what it is and when we acknowledge what it does to us that we'll be able to join hands and face those two viruses which has been plaguing us for centuries.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned those two challenges, racism and sexism, sort of this double-edged sword that Black women face in this country. And one of the things that you mention in your book is that you're encouraging women to rediscover their dreams and to move towards living their dreams.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know how you would maybe make that more pragmatic for individuals who are listening. What does that mean for a woman to rediscover her dreams and move towards living them? And maybe how that was embodied in your own life that they could learn from your example.
Well, I don't focus too much on dreams because dreams are so, it's hard to pin down what you're doing when you're focusing on dreams. So I talk more about having goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a system that I've set up, Rise Up, RISEUP. R is to realize your worth, I to identify your strengths, because research has shown that a lot of people spend 80% of their time trying to work on issues that they will never overcome instead of using the strengths they have. S is to set a priority. E is to elect a support system. U is to unleash the things that are holding you back, because it's not always the ex-husband or the boss or the government. Sometimes we have people and habits that we need to unleash. And then P is to have a plan. And the plan is, what is my goal? We look at the 4 WH words. What is my goal? And we must be very specific about that. And then we say, why do I have that goal? And the reason why I tell women to focus on that is because there are a lot of unhappy people out there who are doctors and lawyers who wanted to be in the arts, but they were told by their parents they should be doctors or lawyers. So make sure that the goal you have is for the right reason. And then the third thing must be when, because we must have a time limit. Because if you have a goal and there isn't something about when we want to accomplish it, it's a pipe dream. Then after that, we get who will be the one supporting me, and then we begin to go after the goal.
For sure. So you've been in Canada for some years now, and one of the questions that's come in from the audience is, do you think things have changed for women in Canada today, and for Black women in Canada today, in comparison to some of the experiences that you have had over the course of your life?
Things have changed in that now more Black women are able to get an education. So we see people, and everyone doesn't have to have a degree and be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, but we see Black women, because there are colleges and other ways of upgrading themselves. We have people who are hairdressers and have their own businesses in different ways. We see them doing well, but still there is so much to be done, because it is as if we take 2 steps forward and then 4 steps back. And I think the more we soar forward, the more is put in place to pull us down, because some people feel that we're second class and we should stay in our place. And I say to women, we shouldn't listen to the negative talk, because we have always been put in the ground as seeds, and we should stay there because we are of no value. But I say to people, little did they understand that we are seeds, so we sprung up, and some of us have even been blossoming, and we have to help others to blossom, because for the change to improve, we have to work together. We have to lift as we climb. That's one of the things that Jean Augustine has always said from I met her over 30 years ago. We must lift as we climb. But we must know what we are climbing, and we must also know that Jesus is at the foot of the ladder, and it's not just to push us up to reach the glass ceiling. He's there washing people's feet, reminding us to be humble. And we need some humility sometimes, because there's too much classism still in the Black community.
So you've mentioned now a few times the importance of education, both to you personally in your own development, in your own sort of professional career, but you've also talked about it in relationship to how people can help to advance themselves. So you've been a part of the Canadian education system for a while, both in Alberta and in Ontario. And I'm curious to know first what your first impressions were of the system when you joined it, the Canadian systems, whether that be Alberta or Ontario, and some of the challenges that you noted. And then what you think has been the progress to date, and whether or not we still have a long way to go in that regard.
Yeah, well, when I went to Alberta to teach, I was amazed that teachers there had only 6 months training. They were trained in what you can find online that is called normal school, 6 months. And here we were coming from other Commonwealth countries, Jamaica in particular, where we had 3 years training under the British system. So it amazed me at how little there was here in teacher training. And it also made me crazy that they were downplaying what we were bringing to the country. Then as things moved on, we saw some acknowledgement of what we could do. So we were seen as good teachers, but we weren't necessarily given the promotion that we needed, that we should have. I moved to Ontario and it was almost the same thing. There were more women who were educated and we had a lot more Black teachers, but still there was the racism there among us in school boards and also for our children in the system. So I repeat, we have made some progress, but there's a lot of work to be done because we also need to educate ourselves that we are able to fight the system, not in an aggressive manner, but in a strategic way so that we will see changes that will affect our lives and the lives of our children.
And so when you say we, you're not just referring to people involved in the system, you're also talking about the community, parents, families.
Everyone.
Everyone. Yeah. And so
sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I send out a message every Monday called Thank God It's Monday. And in the last few months, I've been including things that have to do with the virus. And the one I sent out this Monday, the topic was, are you a taxpayer? Because I'm saying that all taxpayers must realize that their money must be spent properly in the educational system, whether you have children or not. And that's one of the things we need to do, stop fighting and just yelling racism instead of going to our MLAs and saying, my tax dollars are not being spent properly with the people who you're hiring who are racist, or with the programs that we have that might not be delivered properly. So we need taxpayers, and we also need to join hands with other people who are supportive but do not know how to help us, because Blacks alone cannot get rid of racism.
So, fair point. And I'm actually interested, maybe if you can build that out a little more. So when you say Blacks alone are not responsible for or cannot themselves end racism, what do you mean?
Well, first of all, we have to stop taking ownership of racism. We did not initiate it. We did not drag our foremothers and forefathers from Africa in chains. So we didn't initiate it. We do not perpetuate it. We're fighting against it. And we haven't got the decision-making power to put an end to it. So we need people out there with the decision-making power, people in the government, people who we put in place, people in the institutions to work with us and see us as taxpayers who are not asking them for a favor, but saying my tax dollars must educate Black students the way you are educating other people.
So in that vein, one of the workshops that you present as part of your consulting work is called Meeting the Needs of Culturally Diverse Communities Through Responsive Organization. So what do you mean by a responsive organization in today's context of equity, diversity, and inclusion?
Well, if we have organizations, whether they're community organizations or the school board or wherever, we have to be well educated as to what is happening. When we have organizations, say, that want to help women with a business, that wants to help women to make money, we have to realize that racism and sexism are also there and deal with that. We have to realize that if we are to respond in a meaningful way, we have to help women with things like emotional abuse. We have to look out so very, very much for single mothers. Our Black community has more single mothers than any other community, and they are willing to work, but they need the support which sometimes they are not given. And sometimes we say, why aren't they doing this or why aren't they doing that? A lot of us know in different circumstances what we should do, but not everyone has the ability to do it. And we need to be cognizant of that fact, especially when we are dealing with single moms, and help them to make those two first steps so they can soar ahead like the rest of us.
So, and that is actually leads into one of the questions that's come from one of the folks that's listening in tonight. They were asking, how does a woman who's in survival mode motivate herself to move from where she is to where she needs to be?
One of the things she has to do is to be sure as to where she wants to be. And like I said, focus on your strengths. Focus on the other things that you have done properly. Do not focus on the things that you cannot do. Focus on your strengths and see how you can reapply even some of the challenges that you have had. My phrase is to use your challenges as stepping stones and keep on saying, yes, I can. We were saying that long before Obama said it. Yes, we can. That's how our foremothers and forefathers got out of slavery, by saying, yes, we can. And they sang and they danced, and we must remember them so that we can go ahead. They sang, they danced, they provided the whole world with those spirituals, the sorrow songs of bondage, and they have brought us to where we are now. So we have to keep going, accept help. Some of our women do not want to accept help. They think it's a weakness. If I help you, it makes you look good. And whenever I help a woman, I also learn from them. It's a two-way street.
So you, now we're thinking about your life a little bit here. So have children young, in a
Might
relationship.
be not as young as I did.
I'm just saying, you're in a relationship, difficult. You're not a supportive place to be, and you're raising at the time 3 young men. And one of the questions that's come from the group here is, how does a single mom without potentially a positive male role model at home raise sons to be respectful men?
Well, to begin with, boys do not learn just from what is happening in the home. They learn by what they see happening in the community. And I have a lot of men in my community, in my family, who my boys could see were doing the right thing. Also, I was very aggressive with my children. I was young, but I was not frivolous. With some of them, I just had to give them a look. They knew the look, and then they would smarten up.
I know the look. I know the look, Ettie.
You know the look.
I've seen the look. Your look, you know.
But also, not everybody can be as aggressive as I am, but that's why I say we need to get help. We need to have someone to say, I have these 3 boys, an uncle, a brother, someone else, or it might be your church, but we should always be looking for someone who can help us. And we also have to stop thinking that when boys do not have their dads, that they're going to end up in the wrong path. That's not always so. If we make them know that they're important, we tell them that we love them, we help them to build their self-esteem.
So, we've talked a little bit about how you're able to persevere and some potential, suggestions for women who might find themselves in the same place. And there's a specific section of your book, if you don't mind, that I will read very quickly. Yes. It's on page 94 and 95, and just to get your response to. This is not the way I had envisioned my life. There is too much uncertainty and too much happiness. I am a Jamaican. I come from a society where laughing, dancing, singing, sharing, and having a sense of humor are survival skills. People dance to calypso based on people's misfortunes. Laughter is our constant friend. Children from an early age instinctively entertain with songs, recitations, memory games, and Bible verses. Old folks dance the quadrille and play the rumba box. During our times of sadness, we are uplifted by spirituals, our sorrow songs of bondage. Family togetherness is a natural way of life. There are no divisions, even for those who are in-laws, stepchildren, outside children, or distant cousins. How then can my life be so bereft of love, understanding, and family cohesion? I thought it was a really powerful moment in the book, and just wondering if you can talk about where you were at that point and then how you were able to turn things around in your own life.
This was when I was at a low point, when my ex-husband was treating myself and the children very badly. And I knew that that's not what my life should be like. I knew that's not what my grandmother, my mother, my stepmother, and all my family expected of me. And so I knew that I had to be a lion, not a mouse, and use what I know from my life in Jamaica. And that has sustained me so much. What I keep remembering of growing up in Manchester, Jamaica, and how people treated each other and the strength that we had, even among people who were poor that my family had to help. But there was something there, a strength that kept us going, kept us laughing, kept us dancing. And so I didn't see why, after I got an education and had 4 healthy kids, my life should be so dejected and so unhappy. And that was a turning point for me when I said I was teetering like I was on a tightrope and that it had to stop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we've had a couple of questions come in that are connected, so I'm going to ask them both together at the same time. So some of the folks who are listening are wondering what advice you would give to women who are dealing with sexism in a male-dominated industry. So that's the first part. And then the second part is if you have any advice for Black professional women on being successful in spaces that are misogynistic or where they're experiencing misogynoir.
I think the first thing we have to do is that we are well qualified for wherever we find ourselves. That is very important, that there's no doubt about what we have to offer. The second thing is very important because we're always judged differently from others. And we're always, when we're even fighting for our rights, we're told that we're loud and we're hard to get along with. So I urge women to learn to respond and not react. And that is so very, very important. When we react to what is happening to us in the workplace or wherever, we do it in anger, in an emotional way. And people are glad to see that and tell us how loud we are and we are hard to get along with. When we respond, we are saying, again, I go back to my WH words. Why are you speaking to me like that? Why have you been disavowing what I'm doing? Where do you get the authority to speak to me like this? When did you learn to be so rude? When will you learn that I am here doing my job and that I will not tolerate the way you are treating me? So we need to learn very early on that when these things are happening, the racism and the sexism, we must respond and not react. And sometimes that's very difficult. And if we can ask some of those questions with a smile on our face, that's even better. Because the people who are harassing us or treating us badly, they're confused because they expect us to shout and yell.
Mm-hmm. You're getting some kudos in the chat, which you can't see because of the situation we're in right now. And every time you're talking, I keep wanting to say and I'm interrupting you. I apologize. But just so you know, people are giving you some kudos in the chat. There was a question that came through that is an interesting one. I'm interested in your perspective. So the book is called Women Are Worthy and has very specific messages for women, regardless of where they come from. And one of the questions that came up in the chat was, are there some lessons for young men or boys in this book? What can they take away from this book, Women Are Worthy?
Well, you know, men have read my book. One young man who has a little restaurant said to me, your book has given me hope. When I saw that you came here as a trained teacher and they sent you to do grade 12 subjects and you carried on, it has given me hope. Another man who was a teacher said to me, you have made the book seem as if it's for women, but it could be for all immigrants to show us that the treatment that we receive when we come here, if we persevere, we're able to overcome. So I would say the same thing to young men, to everyone. When you're challenged, You need to say this is not acceptable and find the assistance that you need. I want to make a very, very important point here with our young men. My heart grieves for them killing each other with guns. And I want everyone who is listening to know and to spread the word that research shows that everyone all over the world, not black boys or black men or black people, all over the world who break the law did not complete high school. Because if you do not complete high school, you have no hope. So it's easy for people who are out there who do not care about your welfare to get you involved in crime. And that is why it's so important what happened to our boys and our girls, of course, in the educational system. If they do not get a semblance of a good education, it's far more easy for them to engage in a life of crime, whether they're with a single mother or they're with the whole family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't want to leave that point because I think it's an important one. So if we have so much tied up in the education system,
yes,
and you having been a part of the system for a long time, do you have any tips, any suggestions, any advice that you can offer to parents about how they can help support their young people as they go through the system?
Yes. Well, the first thing is to get to know the system. There are people who have put 3, 4 children through elementary and high school and do not even know the role of a guidance counselor and has never met with a guidance counselor. So parents need to know how the system works. The other thing is parents have to go to parent-teacher interview, not talking about racism. That is a given. We need to ask questions as to why is my child said to be A, B, or C, medium, high, or low. We need to ask the school board, how much money do you have in your budget for ongoing professional development so that my child will not experience racism in the classroom? So we need to have parents prepared to be able to challenge what is happening, but to do it in a meaningful way, because school boards do not respond to the word just racism. We have to ask for specific things that should be in place with our tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have to get at the Ministry of Education and the government to do something about the Faculty of Education, because with the multicultural world in which we live, and there are so many children for whom English is a second language. There are schools in Toronto where their children speaking might be 30 different languages. Teachers now cannot leave the Faculty of Education without having even a beginning course in ESL, in special ed, in dealing with children who more and more are having problems mentally. Teacher training is a very, very important part of it, and parents are taxpayers and they must demand that there is some improvement there.
For sure, for sure. So just to underscore that, what you're suggesting is that there should be some request of the Ministry of Education to make some changes to teacher training so that it incorporates some of those things that you just mentioned, ESL, special ed, and dealing with young people who are experiencing mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when I put on a workshop for Black parents, I wish people would show up. The last workshop I did, 12 people came, and I think 2 were grandparents.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
And when I was
giving people a hard time, Ettie.
No, I mean, when we are talking about education, we have to just tell the truth. You know, this is my experience. In Calgary, I started a Saturday morning school for children. I didn't just shout racism. And many mornings, my husband had to go around and pick up the kids because their parents couldn't be bothered to drop them off at the multicultural center where we had the classes. Mm-hmm. As a Black community, we have to put more into the education of our children, or else we will continue having all the things that we're having now, in spite of all the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. So you've talked about the necessity for parents to understand the system, to lobby their elected leaders to make some changes. You've talked about the importance of women coming together to support one another. And one of the questions that has come up in the chat is how what are some of the mechanisms? What are some of the ways that we can bring women together to help support one another?
Don't get me started. The first thing is for women to understand that we are in a process together. So it doesn't matter whether you have a PhD or you're working in a hospital or a hotel as a maid, an old time word that we use. We as Black people are seen the same way. And so it behoves us as intelligent people to see that our sisters are lifted up beside us. Mm-hmm. We cannot have organizations that focus on just the people who are in our group. We need to reach out to the community, let them know what we are doing, why we are doing it, and make an effort to get to the people out there who can benefit from the little that we are able to do. So I urge everyone who wants to help. And the thing about it is when we help each other, we're helping ourselves when we help others.
Absolutely. I'm, because I don't see your face and I can't get the prompts, it's difficult for me to know when you're finished. So I just wanted to make sure that you were done there. Apologize for the gap. So, all right. So you said that it's very important to connect, recognize that we have to lift up one another regardless of our current position. You've been a part of an organization for a long, long time called the Congress of Black Women. I don't know if you want to mention your involvement with that organization and the importance that it's played in your life.
Yeah, the Congress has made a big difference in my life because when I got involved in it from I was living in Calgary, Jean Augustine had come to the West to tell us about the Congress, and I got involved as a chapter president and also as a provincial rep. And then after that, I worked at the national level with 2 different presidents as assistant president. Then I moved to Ontario and I was the provincial rep in Ontario. That's when I met your beautiful wife because she was also in the Congress. She was the president of a chapter. And when I was the provincial rep, she was my secretary. So she taught me how to use the computer.
And clearly that's work tonight. You know what I mean?
And we decided that the first thing we would do would be to get a website for Ontario. So she did the technical part and I did the writing. So so those are the areas in which I've been working in the Congress. I started a chapter also in York region, and myself and Sibla Garrick, another teacher, we used to get girls and try to get them to prepare themselves to go into the Faculty of Education. We also worked with the police by having our meetings at the police station to show that we were in cahoots with them, that we were supportive of them. We also had situations where myself and another teacher would visit girls in high school, Brother Andre High School, every Friday evening to talk to them about being a Black girl, a Black woman. So those are some of the things that we did. I also, when I was rep, started a program called Girls in Transition, where I worked with about 15 teenage girls because the Congress's membership is from 16 years of age. I worked with teenage girls from Monday to Friday. The Scarborough chapter had gotten a school room for me. I worked with the girls from Monday to Friday from 9 to 1 to teach them about self, their ego, how to prepare themselves in school, in life, how to deal with some of the problems at home. So I've always, and like I said, people didn't know why I was so interested in teenage girls and all that until I wrote my book and people saw why I was so interested in women and what I was doing in the Congress. Mm-hmm. And we still have a Congress where people are asking if the Congress is still here. Yes, the Congress is still here. Mm-hmm. So you need to come out and support the Congress because it's very worthwhile. Congress of Black Women of Canada.
Fantastic. So I'm going to make a little editorial comment. You know, sometimes people go through things and in their lives, they find the strength to persevere in a variety of ways, and then sometimes forget what they went through and that other people are going through it as well. And I just want to make sure that, before we end this call, I tip my hat, and I know I speak on behalf of the people that are listening, to you for never forgetting what you went through and how you can help others get through similar things. So I will say thank you to you for that. Even though I have more questions for you, I want to make sure it's said now, and I will say it again. Thank you, Mrs. Ettie Rutherford.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. So there's a question that came up in the chat that I think is an interesting one. I don't know who's asking, but what advice would you give to parents who prefer to indulge their children rather than be, as you said, truthful and maybe push them a little harder?
Well, I think parents can see that indulging their children is not really in the best interest of their child. Their child has to know how to stand on their two legs. They have to know how to speak up in school in a respectful manner. They have to know how to be able to defend the beliefs that have been given to them by their family. So just giving your child another cell phone or having them online texting or doing whatever people do with a phone, I don't even know, must give rise to the fact that that is not preparing your child for the future. Children need to have fun, but it's like everything else. There's a time, my grandmother used to say, there's a time for everything. Education must be right up there. And then after that, for that to be even okay, as a teacher, Vidal, you're a teacher, you know that it's not just the academic. We have to look at the social, emotional, and spiritual growth of the child. So if you're looking at social and spiritual and emotional, you can't be just giving your kid everything it asks for. Then you would be growing some child who will be growing up to be a misfit. They go to class and it's all about them. They go to work and it's all about them. We need to have rounded children, rounded people who do not fail to see that moving ahead means that there are other parts of your life beside education or having a title that must be tended to. So they need to be a rounded person. We need to look at the whole child, as you know, Vidal, before we can expect them to become the adults that we want them to be.
No doubt.
Make them happy, but just like you would give them too much ice cream, you have to force them to eat vegetables. It's the same thing with indulging them. It's not good.
Fair enough. So I didn't ask, and I should have asked earlier, where can people pick up if they don't have them yet? Don't have it yet. Women Are Worthy. Where can people get the book?
My book is online, but when you buy it, I only get, my book is for $20, and that includes tax. When you buy it from me, you pay me $20. When you buy it online, you pay $20, but I only get about $7. It goes to Amazon. So my husband and I deliver books all over, or we post them to people.
And so how can people get in touch with you to get the book?
Ettie, ETTIE at women, WOMEN, then the letter R, worthy.com. Ettie at women are, just the letter R, worthy.com.
All right.
And I'll have your book to you as quickly as possible.
Cool, and we'll post that in the Q&A section of the chat so that the attendees know how to get in touch with you to get a copy.
Yeah.
So what is next for you, Mrs. Rutherford? You are an accomplished educator. You are an author. You are a consultant. What's the next phase for Ettie Rutherford? Well,
some people might not know, but I have two businesses. One is Women Are Worthy. We're focused mostly on women. I have programs that help women to balance home and work. I help women with time management because there are too many women who are stressed because they're trying to do too much. And women have to realize that they need time for self. There are far too many women who are going around saying, I'm stressed. I don't even have time for breakfast or whatever. There are too many women going around saying, if it weren't for Tim Hortons coffee, I don't know how I would keep up with what I have to do. So I help women with setting priorities so that they have some time management skills. It's not just having a to-do list. If your to-do list has 20 things, then that's not helping you. You must set priorities. Covey tells us in one of his books that we must decide what is important and urgent, what is important, and then the rest of it we delegate. Women hate to delegate because they say other people won't do the task the way they do it. It doesn't matter. The problem is that we must delegate and be clear as to what we want the other person to do. And that is the way we have to make sure that we have time for self and that we can move forward in a healthy manner and beat stress.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I will encourage people to get in touch and pick up the book. I think one of the things that really struck me in reading it a while back and now rereading it is how open and honest you are, you know, with your struggles, with your relationships, with your struggles in single motherhood. Maybe if you can for a minute, just talk about why it was important for you to be so open and honest and whether or not you found that a difficult process when you were writing the book.
It wasn't difficult for me because from I was a child, I was very open. I was always talking and telling people what to do. Sorry. No, I've always been open. I've never been one to say one thing and mean another. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, but so what? Mm-hmm. I've always been open. So being open in the book, I don't see how I could be covering up a part of what I've been through and expect women to respect me or to respect the advice that I'm giving them when they come to me for coaching. So women have to know that when you tell me about your problems, I've been there. I'm not talking to you because of what I've read in a book. I have been there. Mm-hmm. And that is very important to me and to a lot of women. Also, as I mentioned about Women Are Worthy, I also have another business, ER Education Consulting. And right now I'm preparing things to put on it for parents and educators to download to help in this time of COVID when our children's education is being twisted around in the wind and we are remaining silent. I also would like to say this to the Black community, that a lot of our children and adults as well have mental problems, and we have to stop pretending that that means that they're going crazy. We need to go to psychiatrists to help our children and our adults with mental problems. There are a lot of kids who are threatening to commit suicide and are cutting themselves now because of pandemic and all that is going on with the uncertainty and wearing masks for hours. And so what we are talking about today is so very important with parents and with everybody who wants to get into prepare our kids for the future, because they are being thrown under the bus.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I'm a chick or an eagle, but I do know that a little birdie told me that there may be another piece of work coming out from Ettie Rutherford. Is that the case?
Yeah, I started another book 4 years ago. I was in a car accident and that has kind of changed things. And however, my book that I'm working on is for women, of course. And the title of the book is Women Are Worthy: Achieving Success by Overcoming Stress. Women have to fight to overcome stress. It's not supposed to be a part of your life. I never heard the word stress in Jamaica as long as I was there. I didn't know of the word until I was in Athabasca and my ex-husband was acting up and the doctor told me I had stress. That's why I was so ill. We have to stop accepting stress as a way of life. Jesus didn't die on the cross for us to be stressed out. He died for us to be happy. So if people need help in me assisting them with dealing with stress, I can do that through Women Are Worthy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to say that somebody from Calgary has indicated that they're very glad to listen to you. I believe it's Dell Stevens. I'm gonna call out the name because it was provided to me. Yeah. So big up yourself from Calgary.
Yeah, that was my home for 21 years. Dell was one of my sisters. Yeah.
There we go. So We only have a couple. I mean, the hour has breezed by. We have a couple minutes left. I do want to give you an opportunity to, if there's anything that I haven't asked you, or if you think there's something important that you want to share with the crowd, or even just say goodbye, please do so now, and then I'll save my big thank you for when you're complete there.
There's one thing that I want to mention. You had asked me if I wanted to read. We don't have time for me to read from my book, except for one very short place where I have here. It talked about what happened after my son Carl had fallen down and broken out his teeth, and my ex-husband sat there playing solitaire and didn't even take him to the doctor, and it had to be a neighbor to take my kid to the doctor. When we came back, he was still there playing solitaire and didn't even look at us. And I said here in my book on page 123, that was the day I came face to face with the devastation of psychological abuse. I didn't have the label for it then, but I knew my children and I were being abused. And that moment was one of the turning points in our marriage and in my life. As much as I cared for my husband, the love that I had for my children was greater. They have to be my first priority. No longer would I be like a non-swimmer trapped under raging torrents, expecting others to come and rescue me. My 4 innocent children needed a mother who was a lioness, not a mouse. And I chose that because I want to mention psychological abuse, because so many of our Black women have been undergoing that for years. And a lot of them do not see it as abuse when they are yelled at or screamed at. Or as my ex-husband did, his most potent weapon was silence. And it is worse sometimes than being hit, because the person is saying to you, we do not acknowledge you, you are a non-entity, you are not there. When you live in a house with someone who is silent for weeks without saying a word to you or the children, it is emotional abuse. A lot of what women go through in the workplace is emotional abuse. And that is something that women need to look about or contact me about, because it is so very rampant and it's the best kept secret in our society.
Miss Ettie, thank you. Thank you for the time tonight. Thank you for never forgetting that you can reach back and help pull somebody up. Thank you for the work that you do for women. Thank you for the work that you do for Black women. And thank you for the work that you will continue to do for all of us as we work to improve the education system here in Ontario and right across the country. I do want to say, sorry, there's one more person that wanted to get hailed up on the mic here. Pauline Creary, Marie Bryson's sister, said
Oh, yeah.
hello. Yes. All right.
Hello,
so just
hello,
so you know.
hello. And I just want to say one thing. I don't want people to get the impression that Ettie Rutherford is the only one who can assist. There are a whole lot of women out there who have been assisting and who continue to assist. And they, like myself, are sometimes surprised why women will not come to them for help. It's not just Ettie. There are other women out there with the same thoughts that I have. But we need more women in the Black community to acknowledge that when they get help, it makes them look good.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will do this again when the next one comes out. Mrs. Rutherford, thank you so much for the time and for everything. As I mentioned before, please say hello to Mr. Des for me, and you guys be safe and be well.
Yeah, Mr. Des, my husband, is my CEO. He is my encouragement officer, my chief encouragement officer.
Fantastic.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's good, man. I didn't know you would give him a good title like that.
Yes, chief encouragement officer. He says he's like Philip. He just walks behind the queen.
I'm going to have to share that one with my wife and see if I can get a similar title.
Yeah, you have to walk behind her.
No doubt. All right, my dear. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you for all that you do also.
No, man. Thank you.
And thank Sean so much for all that he has been doing for us to be here tonight.
Definitely.
And thank the whole police station across the road from me, because it's nice when we work with the police.
Thank you. I don't know how this works now. Andrew, sign us off, my friend.